So these are his slides mostly. It's the anonymous reviewer's perspective on NSF-GRFP applications, and he subtitled it "How to Make Your Reader Happier and Not Want to Incinerate Your Application." So, first of all, who are the reviewers? I mentioned this during the first webinar, but it's been a while since then, so we'll go over it one more time. Basically, it's a mixture of academics, industry scientists, and government scientists. You don't want to expect them to be experts in your field. At least when this reviewer was reviewing, about 30% of reviewers were repeat offenders. They reviewed before, and the rest were newbies. I know the NSF was actually actively recruiting reviewers on Twitter recently, so I think a lot of the reviewers are going to be new. All of your reviewers are going to be busy people. So your application is probably going to be only read once. It's got to flow and deliver all points and up front. So it must deliver the punch on one read. That's really important. How are the reviewers trained to review? The NSF has 2 online Skype sessions. Apparently reviewer education is still an in-progress project for the NSF. The reviewers go over the instructions, discuss the 2 merit criteria, intellectual merit and broader impacts, and then the reviewers practice reading and scoring 4 representative applications of differing levels and differing quality groups. And then they have an online discussion of the reviews with NSF bureaucrats and a reviewer question and answer. So it's kind of not very extensive training, too short of a time with too little instruction from expert reviewers, and this results in uneven reviews. How are reviewers not trained? They're not told what the ideal recipient is. They might have some ideas in their head, but they're not told by the NSF that. They're not trained on specific types of content or any specific points beyond merit criteria. They're also not trained on how to weigh the merit criteria. My impression was they were supposed to be weighed 50-50, and this reviewer weighs them 50-50. However, he notes that other reviewers kind of weigh them as they please. From his experience, broader impacts make a bigger difference because the science is harder to differentiate. There's a larger range of rankings in broader impacts versus intellectual merit. And reviewers come from a wide variety of backgrounds, and it's easier for reviewers to say, yes, these are excellent broader impacts, and it might be harder to differentiate the science. So do bump up your broader impacts for sure. Okay, there's some things the reviewers do wrong that you can't really do much about, but you should be aware of them. They may incompletely read your application. Hopefully that's not the case, but the fix is to be loud and clear with their strengths, use bold and underline, repeat your strengths if necessary, and put important stuff up front. And also, I think having an engaging essay, an engaging and easy to read essay will make it more likely that they'll finish reading your essay. They may have specific biases. Certain schools, for example, tend to get more NSFs than others. They may have unreasonable expectations for level, especially for undergrads or pre-grad students. They may overweigh intellectual merit or broader impacts over the other, and they may disregard the instructions. So just a couple things to be aware of. Okay, the reviewing procedure. So reviewers have access to applications for 3 to 4 weeks, and this is during finals week and winter break. So this is clearly an ideal time for them to be reading a bunch of NSF applications, but so they're probably only going to read them once. Each reviewer has about 30 applications. They're randomly distributed. The typical read score time is about 15 to 20 minutes total per application. And then the scores are entered into an online form. They're collated and normalized by NSF to give a Z-score. So they're all normalized by so all the essays that one reviewer reviews, the scores are transformed to a Z-score, which is like a standard deviation from the reviewer's mean. And that allows the NSF to compare reviews from different reviewers. So after all the scores are collected, then the applications are ranked. If there are large discrepancies between 2 different reviewers on a single application, and they have a discussion and they try to resolve that discrepancy. And then re-ranking is allowed in those cases. There's a global discussion of ranking, and then a final ranking is agreed upon. And then the NSF awards the top half of awards per these rankings, basically. And then, so just the top 12.5% or whatever of them will get awards. And then they also award an additional 12.5% based on their own internal criteria. And this is kind of a black box, but part of it is they're trying to increase diversity in the sciences, so that could be part of it. They try to have more geographical diversity, and probably this will also will be where the new priority areas come in to play here. So,
Kelsey, can you just repeat that like one more time? Sorry, that
yeah,
last
sure.
part, the top half.
Yeah, so basically they'll take rankings from all the applications that they get. So, you know, so I guess, like, you know, they're awarding 1,600 awards this year, right? So 800 of those will be just the top 800 ranks scores. And then the next 800 will be from the rest of the applications using their own internal criteria. There'll probably be ones that have really good scores, but they may like pull up ones that they want to fund for whatever reason. Anyway. Okay, and then how are applicants scored? So this is the box that they're given, that the reviewers are given. For intellectual merit, they can pick excellent, very good, good, fair, poor, and then leave a 100-character minimum comment. Same for broader impacts, and then they give a score from 0 to 50 that's not seen by you for each application. Okay, this reviewer identified a number of kisses of death, just to be aware of. I think you guys are pretty well trained on the NSF, so I don't think you have to worry about it, but we'll just go over them anyways. Having an incomplete application or not following instructions, not properly addressing broader impacts. You need more than just a paragraph heading. You actually have to have those broader impacts. Any equivocation in your letters of reference. So you really want your letter writers to have a positive view of you and to know you pretty well, so you can have good letters. Level 2 and 3, if you're missing a letter from your institution or proposal advisor, that's a kiss of death. You want to have that for sure. If your application has poor English, sloppy, or difficult to read or understand sentences. In the personal statement, if it's overly egotistical, that's a problem. He also doesn't like it when they're overly personal and they're relevant to the application. I always wanted to be a scientist since I wash my shit on the toilet. And if the personal statement is lacking short and long-term goals. Kisses of death in the research plan would be lack of a coherent hypothesis, lack of coherent contextualization, significance of the research, excessive experimental detail at the expense of the bigger picture. Boring, same old shit. So if it's just something that's like really standard in your field that's not really interesting, I think the example I gave for molecular biology was just proposing to do a CRISPR experiment. If on the opposite side, if your research is totally unrealistic, that's also not going to work. For levels 2 and 3, so people who are currently in grad school, if the research is not connected to the research being done at the institution, and if there's any unfilled holes in your plan, that's a problem. All right. Surefire winners, according to this NSF reviewer. Number 1 is easy to read applications. And we're going to work on this through the peer editing mostly, but yeah, you want it to be easy to read and understandable in one go. You want to be specific about as much as possible. So your broader impacts, for example, have specific activities planned for that. If you have a truly transformative and creative research plan, which he says is very rare, then you have a surefire winner there. If you have really good letters from important professors, if you have a coherent plan for your broader impacts. So that's a specific plan for activities, a demonstrated track record of actually doing these things. And he says a broader impacts letter writer is very helpful for this. And then if possible, to make connections to your research project. Demonstrated previous commitment to outreach and underrepresented minority involved activities. All right. So I have a couple, so these are my slides. I have a couple examples of reviews from various applications, and I have a couple from the reviewer, this reviewer himself, which is useful because he gives a number of bad reviews, which can be good to see, but we're gonna start with a good review. Here's an excellent review, and this is what you should aim for. They say that the applicant has many awards, but no publications with a strong academic background. So she got it without any publications. She provides examples of persistence after failure, which resulted in a payoff, which is what you should do if you have any overcome any difficulties. She identifies independent growth with mentor guidance. Research statement is well thought out with clear hypotheses and aims. Candidate clearly identifies anticipated results and seems to know how to interpret her results. In addition, the candidate identifies pitfalls and potential other discoveries that may occur. And you can read, if you want to read the proposal, I'll send a link out, but it's the 2019 plant biology proposal. Here's an example of a very good review. Applicant has a good academic record, including being on the dean's list for 3 consecutive years. The applicant has excellent research experience, including 3 years of undergraduate research that resulted in a first place poster presentation. Further research experience includes work in 2 biotech companies. Although the applicant has no publications, contributions to his present lab resulted in a publication that is in preparation. So it's definitely worth it to mention if any of your research is going to result eventually in a publication. It's not as good as actually having the publication, but you can see here that it helped and this person got it. You can read the proposal there. Here's an example of a very good broader impacts review that could be a little stronger though. So the applicant provides evidence of lifelong mentoring, both in and out of science. The broader impact of her proposed work lies mainly in making any developed code freely available. Although her stated goal is to communicate with anyone, most of the stated communications are necessarily limited to those in related fields. Although already very strong, this section can be made slightly stronger by having a more focused vision on how to communicate information to the public. So this is probably supposed to say the lay public. So you want to keep in mind if you're proposing to do science communication, like who your audience is and who you're trying to outreach to, and you want to talk about that specifically. Okay, I have an example here of a really unfair review, but I think it's just worth going over so you can, I don't know, just try to not get a review like this. Basically what happened is the person who applied had an outstanding academic record, okay? 2 genome papers in preparation, and they had amazing broader impacts, but the reviewer didn't like the applicant's proposed research, basically. So this reviewer said the applicant proposed to study diversity and function of fungi associated with seagrass, but apparently she and her home lab lack basic knowledge about marine fungi and biology of seagrass. Her proposed research is based on the basic assumption that plant fungal associations could be studied in a simpler way on land, etc. And basically saying that he thought that that the whole proposal wouldn't work because the applicant doesn't know anything about the biology of seagrass. And it was really weird because actually her project wasn't totally unfounded, and she ended up doing and getting really interesting results. So the reviewer wasn't right in his interpretation of it, but basically this is the reason she didn't get funded, because the reviewer felt like the scientific foundation of the paper was lacking. So you do want to make sure everything in your paper makes sense scientifically. And if it's something that's kind of novel, like this person was proposing, then you need to provide citations that support that it's actually going to work. And then, the reviewer said, under broader impacts, the broader impacts of the proposed research is not clear since the hypothesis and experiment is not based on any solid evidence. So, I don't hopefully you don't get a reviewer like this one. It's really kind of messed up. All right, so then I have some reviews from the anonymous reviewer. We'll start with excellence for intellectual merit, academic record, multidisciplinary background, impressive publication record, and obvious love of science. Speak to a highly promising and interactive research career. Your proposal to block leader peptide is interesting, although it seems to be technically demanding. Is this a realistic project? But nonetheless, a nice proposal. For broader impacts, your commitment and demonstrated participation in outreach, chemical education, and increasing access to computing is exemplary. Your outreach plans, besides those already in the works to bridge the social gulf between science and religion, is laudable and well conceived. So, and then these are just the reviewer's notes. So this person actually had 5 publications and a 3.98 GPA, great letters, high promise, interactive, interested in education, great outreach experience, etc. So that's a really good applicant. And they got a score of 44. On the flip side, here's a bad one. Although you're clearly a bright and motivated young scientist with a likely successful research career ahead, you also need to fulfill the requirements of the GRFP application. While this reader appreciates the difficulty of formulating a research proposal so early in your studies, nonetheless, it's a valuable exercise that gives the reviewer a view of how well a student can define a problem, post a hypothesis, etc. So they didn't read the direction. The research plan was overly technical and did not demonstrate understanding. And they didn't have any broader impacts in theirs, so they didn't get it. So here's one that got excellent intellectual merit, so good recommendation letters, well-articulated essays, etc. But the broader impact, they basically proposed to do blogging, but it would have been strengthened by a more concrete description of the topics, scope, and audience they plan to reach using the blog. So if your broader impacts does include blogging, this is probably something you want to consider. Who's your audience? Like, what are you going to write about? What's the scope, etc. How are you going to, reach people? Okay. And then here's one where the intellectual merit could have been a little bit better. Basically, they say that the academic record is less than competitive, but the letters articulate research descriptions and laboratory productivity indicate you're a motivated and talented researcher with a promising career ahead. The proposal, however, may have benefited from a broader view. So many protein variants have been created, and it was unclear as to how the study would add to that knowledge, especially with coarse genetic analysis. So placing the experiment in a larger context would strengthen the proposal. And I see this in a lot of reviews, so this is something you want to keep in mind for your proposal. And I would recommend doing that in the intellectual merit section of your research proposal. And this was somebody who apparently did not have very good grades, but their letter writers suggested that they were suggested otherwise, that they're creative, energetic, and productive. So so your letter writers can definitely make up for deficiencies in grades. And they didn't have papers in press, nor a mention of one. Yeah. And that's all my examples. I'll send out the slides so you can look at them in more detail too. And cool, that's the class. So I think I've given all my advice now. And now it's time to just write your essays. And we can still talk through stuff like one-on-one for specific advice. So if you haven't already, you can schedule a Skype meeting with me to discuss your research proposal or personal statements. I got most personal statements on time. If you haven't sent me yours yet, then you should email me and we can set up another deadline, because it's important to have a deadline, otherwise you'll start to fall behind on these drafts. And does anyone have any questions?
I had one.
Yeah.
I didn't include this in my personal statement because I just didn't really think of it, but that last example made me think of this. But so if we don't have any publications, like,
Yeah.
should we comment on that and explain, like,
Yeah.
why?
I think so. Yeah, and these reviewers are really obsessed with publications. So I think if you have a good reason why you don't have them, then that's okay. Like, like for example, you were in industry, right? So, people, they don't usually publish. So that's a good reason.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, then thanks everybody. Good luck on all your writing, and I'll talk to you individually soon.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Yeah. Have a good one.
Thank you.